Then the king arose very early in the morning and went and hastened to the dens of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest, continually able to deliver thee from the lions? Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and has shut the lions' mouths, that they have not heard from me. For as much as before him innocency was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt? Then was the king exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in God, in his God. And the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions, them, their children, and their wives, and the lions had the mystery of them, and break all their bone in places wherever they came at the bottom of the den. Then King Darius wrote unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and steadfast forever, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivered and rescued, and he worked signs and wonders in heaven and in earth, who have delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius, and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. God's words for God's people have already been blessed. Amen.
Your goodness and mercy towards us. We give you praise. I won't hold you long this morning. I normally have 3 points to my sermon, but this morning I only have 1. Very early the next morning, the king got up, hurried to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in English, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions? I know this is an old story that we've heard years ago in Sunday school. But I thought it would be nice to refresh our memories. There may be some who have forgotten about the story of Daniel. We talk about Daniel that God is able to shut lions' mouths in the den. When I got to thinking about this, what caused him to get in the den in the first place? Why was this man in a lion's den? Stop right there for a moment. Let me put a pin in this so you understand something where I'm going. I want you to understand, first off, that Babylon is a culture. A big culture, even the culture in which we live. At the time, it was a dominating culture in the world. Number 2, would you remember this, that lions are the instruments that the culture uses to challenge your faith. And 3, will you remain faithful to the God, not of the culture, but the God who saves? Now to the story. Why was he in the lion's den? Who was Daniel? What's so special about him? that they were right about this man named Daniel. Well, Daniel is one of the exiles of Judah that stayed in Babylon. Remember now, the Jews now have returned home to Jerusalem, but Daniel stayed. He stayed in Babylon. And Daniel had a good job. Daniel stayed there, and when he stayed there, he was perceived as a wise and intelligent man. Daniel worked in the king's court. The first king was Belshazzar. He worked in this king's court, but one day the king, Belshazzar, was having a party. He was having a party, and at the party, they were worshiping gods of gold and silver. And they praised, in other words, and worshiped the economic structures of their day. They worshiped their wealth and well-being. What do you mean, preacher? Oh, they looked at their investments in the corporate rooms and said, how proud we are. Look at our investments. We held fast in the midst of the stock market. They were like the Exxons and the Valeros who were making money, our folks, like they had never made before. They jacked up the prices. Silver and the gold. And these were the heads of the corporations sitting around this party, and there was one whose king was worshiping, and while they were worshiping their investments, king looked over on the wall, plaster by the lampstand, and the king saw something that he did not understand. He saw a human finger begin to write on the wall. They were laughing and dancing with all their concubines. The ladies were in the house. They were having a good time. And all of a sudden, the king looked over the lampstand and saw a finger writing on the wall. He wanted to know what the writing meant. And nobody could tell him what the writing was. He knew something was strange, so he called in all the astrologers and mysticism and world religions. He said, y'all come tell me what it means. They could not. But then comes the queen, his queen, comes in and says, well, while you party and have a good time, there's a man that I know, serves the living God. He's wise, he's intelligent, and he can tell you what it means. Belshazzar says, call him, bring him on in. And his name was Daniel. He told Daniel, if you can tell them what the writing on the wall means, this is what I'll do for you, Daniel. I'll give you a robe of purple or royalty. I'll put a gold chain around your neck. I'm going to give you some bling bling, bro. I'm going to give you some of my investments. If you can tell me what all this means, Daniel, if you can do that for me, man, I'm going to hook you up. And you will be rich for the rest of your life. Daniel said, what I'm going to tell you, money can't buy. You keep it. You keep what you have. He said, but I'm going to tell you the truth. He says, okay. Then tell me the truth. He says, that handwriting on the wall says this: God has numbered your days. Not only has God numbered your days, Belshazzar, you have been waiting and found wanting. And your kingdom is divided. In other words, Belshazzar, you're a lightweight man, and all your money don't mean nothing. You think you all that and a bag of chips. But when the Lord looks at your life, you ain't nothing. You ain't got it going on like you think you got it going on. And what happened was, Belshazzar died, and then a new king comes in by the name of Darius. Fast forward. And so what happens is, Daniel is promoted to the third highest in the kingdom. He gets his purple robe. He gets his bling bling. And there he sits there with the king. He sits there with the king. He sits there with the king. And what happened was, as he's there in the kingdom, some folk become jealous of Daniel. You got folk like that on your job. When you're doing a good job, you third highest ranking in the company. And folks start to find ways to talk about you. Folks find ways sort of bring you down. Folk get together in little huddles trying to see ways that they can tear you down. These people look at ways to try to bring Daniel down. What was it about Daniel that they wanted to tear down? Was it his remarkable spirit? What was it about his spirit? Perhaps it was the way that he went about doing things. Not complaining or grumbling. It was the manner perhaps in the way in which he lived his life. Maybe it was the manner in which he walked and lived daily. They said, now, well, we look at his record. We went to personnel and we followed him a little bit. He's in good shape, and there is nothing in his personnel record that would indicate something that we can bring up about him. There's nothing in his personnel record that we can attack so that he can be demoted and removed from the position he's in. So what can we do? Oh, I know what we can do. Let's put together a little lie and go to the king and say, King Darius, you're a mighty man. And King Darius, what we want to do is have you make a law that anybody who worships anybody but you in the next 30 days, you're going to put in the den. King Darius, anybody who does not pray to you over the next 30 days will be put in prison. Anybody who does not bow down to you, O king of Babylon, O king of the world, then guess what? And make it law. Why would they do that? Well, they knew Daniel was a faithful man. They knew Daniel was a praying man. And they knew that Daniel worshiped God who sits high and looks low. So they said, well, let's attack him in the place where we think he's most vulnerable. Let's attack him in his faith. Okay. King said, all right, I'll go for it. Because y'all have pumped up my ego. And we'll do that. We'll do this just that. We'll put it into law. We'll put things in the law so that they can only worship me. And this is where the trouble begins. Begin by stating how one lives and be faithful to God in their present situation. Notice that Daniel did not return to Jerusalem, but he was still faithful in the place where he was. In the situation of location, that's what it is. Daniel was in Babylon, but his folk had returned to Jerusalem, but Daniel still worshiped God. See, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what part of the country you live in, as long as you worship God. See, a person is maybe physically dislocated, living under a different rule, but they can still worship God. Begin by asking you this morning so that we can understand the text, and I'm almost done. What is it that claims your values? Are there competing values in your life? In other words, who am I committed to? Am I committed to my worldly investments, or am I committed to God? What is it that shapes your life and your course of action? Where do your loyalties lie. Okay. The officials try to track him. They try to put him there. And Daniel is a non-conformist. He does not conform to the king's rule. Why? Because they spy on Daniel. They go by Daniel's house, peep in the window, and there is Daniel praying. Why are they around somebody else's house, peeking in somebody else's window, trying to find out what they are doing, rather than doing what they are supposed to be doing? The Williams brother says you ought to sweep around your own back door before you try to sweep around mine. And maybe that's what gets some folk in trouble all the time. They're always, you'll see folk watching you, seeing what you're doing, seeing where you're going, seeing what you do and where you go to eat. Always got their eyes on you. Maybe you're doing something that they The values of the kingdom are contrary to the values of the God we serve. Make it plain, preacher. The values of this world, contrary to the values of the God we serve. That's right. We will be at odds with all other realms that attack our values. And can you do things that make you uncomfortable with and still hold to your faith? Let me begin by saying this because we know what happens. We know what happens. They go back telling Daniel. Daniel is caught praying to the true and living God, and he's placed in the lion's den so that the lion can eat him up. Remember that the lion is the tool that the culture uses to cause you to have static in your life. And the king comes the next morning and says, Daniel, is the God you serve, or did the God that you serve save you? Let me pause there for a moment and answer the question. We know what happened to Daniel. But in life sometimes, because I have to be careful how I preach this, in life sometimes we don't make it through the lion's den. That's right. Not all of us prevail in the lion's den. Because if I stood here before you this morning and told you that if you're placed in the lion's den and God's going to come and get you and bring you out, and guess what happens? You're in the den and you don't get out, I lied to you. That ain't what the story said, preacher. Listen to what I'm saying. Not all will prevail if you stand up for what is right. That's right. That's right. Not all times in life will you prevail when you stand up for values. Not all time will you prevail when you stand up against the modern day culture that's speaking an outright lie. Make it plain, preacher. John the Baptist stood up for what was right, and he lost his head. Martin Luther King stood up for what was right against injustice and against those who did not want you to vote. He stood up for what was right, and he was assassinated. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a renowned theologian, stood up against Adolf Hitler, and he was executed. Even today, we have persons who are standing up for what is right, and it is a difficult task. The lie has been told. For those who will stand up against their party, stand up for true values. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, I don't agree with all their policies. But at least she is standing up for what is right. She may lose her primary seat. She may not be voted again in office. But at least she's willing to lose that for which she stands for. So I'm not going to make you a false promise this morning. That if you stand up for what is right, that you'll always make it through. Y'all follow me for a moment. We're going to shout at them. The good news is that the good news is not that there will be no linings in your life. The good news is there will always be a lining somewhere ready to take you out. The good news is not that you will be spared from the linings then. If there is going to be the promise of life, the promise is this, is that God, it will be with you, whatever then you're in. That's the good news. The good news is God will continue to be with you while you're going through. You may not be exempted from the dead. There may not even be a so-called miraculous moment, but that God is with you as you face the threats of life. That's what this text is saying. We proclaim and trust this God who is with us even in the lion's den. That God will be with us through sickness, through trials, through tribulations, through disappointment, through pain, through suffering. This God is with us. That's the moral of the story. That whatever you're going through in this world, you may lose your job, but God is with you. You may lose your loved one, but God is with you. How do you know, preacher? Look at what Darius did. Darius realized he had done something wrong and lost one of his best friends, one of his best employees. And that morning, he been running to the lion's den and said, "Oh, Daniel, is the God you serve able to save you?" Daniel, are you still there? May I answer this question for you? I don't know if God will, but I know that God is able. I know that God is able to bring you through. I know that God is able to make a way out of no way. I know that God is able to save to the utmost. I know that God is able to be there with me when I'm trying through my difficult times of my life. I know that God is there. Is God able to save? Yes, He is, because God brought Him through. That's what I know. So preacher, what really brought Daniel through and will bring us through? That's what I want to know. Okay, here it is. How can we show our faithfulness to this God with whom we trust? Here it is, 3 things. Number 1, first of all, keep on praying. Daniel knew the consequences were. Daniel knew what the law stated. He knew that the law had been written, but he kept on praying. He would go to his window and pray towards Jerusalem, even when he knew that the odds were against him. Even when you know that the culture in which you live is not accepting to who you are, you ought to keep on praying. When things are not going your way, keep on praying. When your friends lie on you, keep on praying. When folks spy on you, keep on praying. When there's no way out of no way, keep on praying. When you're faithful in your prayer, God is able to save. Daniel had a set time to pray. He prayed 3 times a day. We all ought to have a set time to pray. I'm not telling you what time to pray, but you ought to have a time in your life when you get down on your knees and look toward the heavens. You ought to have a certain time of the day when you wake up in the morning. That's my time. When I'm all by myself, I go on my back deck and I pray to the Lord. Sometimes in noonday, I got to stop for a moment, come by this place and have a little prayer. And before I close my eyes at night, I got to pray. You ought to have a set time, a set place where you can give God some glory. You ought to have a set time and a set place where you can get down on your knees and thank God for blessing you. You ought to have a set time and a set place where you look to the hill from which cometh your help. You ought to have a set time and a set place where you can pray to God. Daniel had a set time. set place. That's how they knew how to find him. May I share this with you? I didn't write it, but it's good. Don't pray when you feel like it. Have an appointment with the Lord and keep it. A man is powerful on his knees. Oh, y'all missed that. May I go through that again? Don't pray when you feel like it. I feel like praying now, Lord. Okay. Have an appointment with the Lord, keep it. Don't set a time and don't show up. You expect God to be there, but you don't show up. You call up, you set the date, Lord, I need to meet and talk with you, and you don't even show up. Let's go show God something that's not even important to you. And the man is most powerful on his knees. What happens, preacher, when that happens? Being faithful has a positive effect on your character.
Thank you, Lord.
Being faithful has a positive effect on your character. That way, you are able to live out greatness with confidence. See, integrity is important. And it starts by how you live your private life. It gives moral authority. Make it plain. In other words, mess up your private life and everything else falls apart. What you do in secret develops your character. What you do in your closet tells something about your moral values. What you do when nobody's looking tells something about your moral compass. Because what I do in secret is going to eventually go come out as to who I really am. Daniel will go pray in secret. Jesus reminded them one day, don't be like the hypocrites. Pray so that others will see how righteous you are. But go pray in your own closet. Here it is, my next point. If you want to be faithful and know that God is with you and bring you through, be faithful in your worship. Be faithful in your worship. Be faithful in your prayer and be faithful in your worship. Your worship is how you go about every day. So folk ought to see you worship, not just on Sunday morning, but on Monday morning at 7:55 before you report to God. Folk ought to be able to see you worship at 12 noon. Folk ought to be able to see your worship, and your worship ought to be authentic. So every now and then, you ought to bow down before the Lord and worship Him and thank Him for all who God is. Your worship, what you do in private, every now and then, it's got to come out so that other folk will see you. I was talking to Brother Nelson last night. He hit me like a ton of bricks. He says he's with somewhere, and then he began to pray over his food. And somebody came over to him and said, "Oh, you a Christian, aren't you?" He said, "Yes, I am. Come here for a minute." Every now and then, somebody ought to walk over to you and say, "You a Christian, aren't you?" I can tell you're a Christian by the way that you pray. I can tell you're a Christian by the way that you worship. I can tell you're a Christian by the way you go about your daily living. Because what you do in private, you don't come out in public. That's good news, isn't it? What's good news, preacher? Well, Daniel made it through the lion's den. God is with us wherever we are. And that's the good news of the text. But can I shout on something for a moment? I like Daniel's response to what the king asked him. But then the king asked the preacher, for he is a living God, and he will endure forever. Daniel says, he sent an angel. He sent an angel to watch over me. Angels watching over me, my Lord. Angels watching over me. That's good news, isn't it? When you're faithful to God, God sends an angel to watch over you. God sends an angel to protect you. God sends an angel to guide you. God sends an angel to lead the way. God sends an angel to protect you. God sends an angel to open doors. God sends an angel to make a way out of no way. Has God ever sent an angel in your life? May I answer that question, Brother Darius? Is the living God that I serve able to save? Oh, yes, he does. Is the living God that I serve able to make a way out of no way? Oh, yes, he can. Is the living God I serve able to protect me from the lion's den? Oh, yes, he did. Come here for a minute. The God I serve saved me. The God I serve made a way out of no way. The God I serve brought me out of lion's den. The God I serve keeps me honest. The God I serve, I'm going to worship. The God I serve, I'm going to pray to him. The God I serve, I'm going to give him glory. The God I serve, I'm going to be gracious. God I serve is able to do exceedingly and abundantly more than you ever could imagine. The God I serve. And to put it this way, the joy I have, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. Say what you want, do what you want to do. This God I serve is able. God I serve will. The God I serve can. Reality is, he's with us wherever we go. Don't care what instrument you use. May I put it this way? Daniel had a lion to try to stop him. But because he was faithful, Isaiah promises us, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Say that again, preacher. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. Say it again, preacher. Come on, one man. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. It won't work. Oh, no, it won't. No weapon that's formed against you shall prosper. No lie shall prosper. No untruth shall prosper. No cheating shall prosper. It won't work. No, it won't. It won't work. Bring on your light. Matter of fact, bring on your fiery furnace. Bring on your armor. Because the God I serve sits high and looks low. Oh, I may not make it through this, but I know that God is with me. And as long as God is with me, victory is already been given to me. And I know that God is with me. I ain't scared of nobody or nothing. As long as God is with me. Come on, lion. Ride all you want to. But the God I serve gonna take care of you too. The God I serve gonna bless me in spite of. The God I serve raise me up. The God I